each other and swarmed by beginners, and both of us are the help type, so we never end up talking. As longtime points travelers, budget travelers, welcome Jamal Robinson of One Tatted Passport.
Thank you much, Stefan.
I learned today that you have a history of travel before points travel. That's somewhat unusual in the points crowd. So tell us how you get from Ohio to jumping off and dashing around the world.
It's been that's a long story, but it's been quite a few years, a culmination of things. But yeah, it started off as a college student who hadn't visited any countries. Graduated from college and started working for the airlines, and that was a whirlwind experience too, because and I'm not sure if this is still the situation, but at the time you could fly for free if you worked for the airlines. So immediately the first thing I think the benefit was I worked for Northwest Airlines. Many people don't even know that airline because it was bought out by Delta. But yeah, the benefit was active the first day you start working for the airline. So
oh wow.
The first week, literally the first weekend, I had worked a week for Northwest Airlines, and the first weekend I worked like a day shift, let's say 9 to 5, and I jumped on the first thing smoking on Friday afternoon or maybe even Saturday morning, going to Hawaii just because I had never been to Hawaii, and before anything changed, any benefits changed, I was going to go to Hawaii. So I went to Hawaii, spent I think I had to be back at work on Monday. So spent 48 hours in Hawaii and then came back to Ohio. And from there, it just kind of took off. Like every single weekend I went from, at the time I was living in Columbus, Ohio, but I went from Columbus, Ohio to New York City, sometimes just for the day. If I had a long weekend, I bounced, speaking of efficient and cheap travel, I bounced from Columbus to Las Vegas, would spend the day in Las Vegas, and then jump on a red eye just so I wouldn't have to pay for hotel, jump on a red eye back to the East Coast, and I don't know, let's say I come to Miami, Florida, and I would spend another day in Miami, Florida, and then jump on a red eye going back to the West Coast, and West Coast back to Columbus, Ohio, back at work on Monday. So just so I wouldn't have to spend any money staying at a hotel. But that kind of evolved over time, and I left Northwest Airlines, fell into the miles and points circle, and here we are today.
We got a lot of people in EPS that, no matter how long you've stayed in a place, they always say, "Oh, you couldn't have understood it. If you stayed a week, it needs to be 2 weeks, 2 weeks, a month. You know nothing. You haven't been there for a year." So,
Very much so.
Very rapid travel is not what many of us are thinking of in 2020. But what did you learn? I mean, I had a very similar thing when I started traveling, that I needed to work, and that meant, what could I do Friday night to Monday morning? And when I was in China, it was very easy with trains, overnight trains. I could do a lot. In the U.S., it often meant a flight. What did you get out of it?
I think there was a lot of that. That was actually my first, I guess, travel experience. So, I mean, for one, I learned that I became more comfortable with travel, because prior to that point, I had never really traveled at all. And I mean, thinking about a 21-year-old who's never been, at least out of the country, and jumping on a 10-hour flight from, I think I may have, for Southwest or for Northwest Airlines, I'd probably jumped from Columbus to Detroit, which was a Northwest hub, and then Detroit straight to Honolulu. I mean, a 10-hour flight from Detroit to Honolulu for a 21-year-old who hasn't been anywhere. I think it was kind of big. So I became a little bit more confident in my ability to, I guess, get on a plane, go to Hawaii's not necessarily foreign, but a destination that's far away.
Well, it's foreign in many sense. Legally, it's not foreign for somebody from Ohio, but I mean, you walk off that plane and in Honolulu. I mean, the air is, different smell, a different feel. The sun is different. I mean, it is a world away.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't even remember. I think back about some of my travel experiences when I mean, really initially starting, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't even remember how I did things because, like, I mean, for instance, we're talking early 2000s. There
Mm-hmm.
was no Uber or Lyft or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not even completely sure of how I got from the airport to my hotel, or it's probably a hostel that I was staying in. I have no idea how I did that, but I somehow pulled that off. But even fast forwarding just a few years from that, I spent quite a bit of time living in Central America in Guatemala. And even that trip, I went down there, and I don't recommend anyone follow my steps, but I was in a job that I wasn't really satisfied with. And I decided to, I was going, my lease of my apartment was coming up for renewal.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a job that I did not enjoy. So this is crazy. I mean, when I'm thinking about this, but I had maybe, and I'm just throwing out a figure, but I had maybe like, let's say $3,000 to my name.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what I was going to do, but I moved out of my apartment. I put, and this shows you how elementary this was, how elementary my thinking was. But I took, let's say $3,000. I took $1,500 and put it in my pocket, and I put $1,500 in the bank. And I was going to go to Guatemala. I had found a cheap flight to Guatemala from Columbus, Ohio. I think it was maybe like $200, $300 round trip, and I just thought that was phenomenal. And I went down to Guatemala with no return date. And at first, I was going to go down there, learn Spanish, and I was going to spend 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and my rationale was, okay, I have $1,500 in my pocket. I have $1,500 in the bank. I'm not sure what happens if I get down to Guatemala and I don't like it. I'm not sure if they accept debit cards, but I have $1,500 in my pocket. Hopefully, they'll get me at least back to Miami, and I can just call my parents and say, "Hey, things didn't work out so well."
But I
But
mean, I guess the answer to why Guatemala is why not Guatemala, but yet there's a lot of places you could pick to learn Spanish. How did you come upon that?
no, again, completely random. So I was intent on learning Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
and it was one of those things. I got on the computer and I pulled up. A lot of the platforms now weren't available then, but I think I pulled up like Expedia or maybe Orbitz or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And just like in the corner, there was a little advertisement that said, no, Columbus, Ohio to Guatemala for $200 round trip or something to that nature. And I'm thinking, well, I have $200 and that seems really cheap. And so like I opened up another window and didn't even know where Guatemala was, but I was like, pulled up another window, pulled up a Wikipedia page. It was like official language is Spanish. It's like sounds good to me. And then opened up another window, and I think maybe Google learn Spanish, and something else popped up about like Spanish language schools in Antigua, Guatemala, and there were some great reviews. So I bought the ticket, and even crazier than that, I bought the ticket. Let's say on Monday night, I went to work. And this was like a last minute ticket. I bought the ticket on Monday. I went to work on Tuesday and Wednesday, just like normal. I quit my job on Wednesday. Thursday, I moved out of my apartment. Friday, I was on the plane going to Guatemala. And yeah, completely. I hope my children don't do any of these things. Like now that I'm thinking about it, but
Well,
I
I've heard that mobility in the United States has dropped tremendously. People are moving much less in their lives, so maybe you are what we need.
yes, so I went down to Guatemala, and I mean even more I guess surprising than that was I went down to Guatemala, and after a month, again going with that same example, going I after a month I went down there with 1,500 in my pocket, and after a month, I still had, I don't know, 1,400, 1,300 in my pocket, and I had gone scuba diving, I had gone to Chichicastenango, the markets in Chichicastenango. I gone to Lago de Atilan. I gone to the ruins up in Copan. Like, I had done everything I possibly wanted to do, and I had
Mm-hmm.
only kind of burned through $100,
Mm-hmm.
maybe $200. And so I was like, you know what? It's an open ticket. I'm just gonna stay another month. Fast forward, I don't even remember. Fast forward many months. Um, yeah, I stayed in Guatemala for quite a bit of time,
Mm-hmm.
and then finally decided I had to get back to real life. So I
Well,
don't even.
speak to that. It's becoming more popular now, but still, the idea for an American to spend a year abroad at that age is still a big deal, and multiple years is, I think, still quite uncommon.
Yeah, yeah. Is and that kind of set this whole travel thing in motion, and from there came back and went to grad school and things like that, but never pushed aside uh, the travel bug.
Mm-hmm.
And there, my travel just kind of took off. And countries later, still going. And now I didn't necessarily fall into, I've been into points and miles for a long time now. But yeah, started the blog, started talking about how I was accumulating points, credit cards, increasing your credit score, things
Mm-hmm.
like that. And now things are taking off even more. Now I'm here with you.
Yeah. And I'm going to share your 5 starter tips to become a points guru. That's a great starting point. And I love how you, although it's been disrupted, you had this philosophy of, I mean, you've been doing the points for a number of years, but then you started blogging, late 2018, early 2019. You're teaching your readers about how they're amassing these points from this basis, and they can too. And then had planned a ton of travels for 2020 using those to show the implementation of it.
Yes. So yeah, just kind of recap. I had planned. Um, I had started. I was already traveling, and I had started an Instagram page with One Tatted Passport as my name. And then it kind of took off from there. People were kind of sending me messages and
Mm-hmm.
inquiring about how I was, even if I was flying economy, how I was going to these destinations, and like what was my experience in Copenhagen, what was my experience in Dubai, what was my experience in Vietnam, and and like, were people receptive to me, and just my overall experience.
Mm-hmm.
um that kind of was I guess a starter for starting my blog and saying, this is how I'm doing it. um, I hadn't, up to that point in 2018, 2019, I hadn't really found too many people that looked like me who were also sharing this information and
Mm-hmm.
were going to the destinations that I wanted to go to. So I kind of wanted to cater to those inquiries and say, I'm just a normal guy with a normal 9 to 5 job. You can do exactly what I'm doing. I had planned, again, I started the blog late 2018 and kind of wrote a lot of introductory material for
Mm-hmm.
2019 with the plan to really take off in 2020. But coronavirus had another plan in mind, and I ended up canceling quite a few trips. So I'm still blogging introductory type
Mm-hmm.
material, but every once in a while I've kind of drop a more advanced
Mm-hmm.
topic on the blog, and even just things I enjoy doing. Like today, probably a few hours ago, I wrote a blog about the seven, what was it, 7 amazing and cheap countries that are open to African countries that are open to Americans right now. I think Africa is kind of an untapped market, and a lot of people don't really recognize the gem that it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, and um, given that Americans are kind of at the moment banned from entering a lot of countries, I thought I would highlight some of the countries that are some of the African countries that are open and that are cheap, because I kind of struggle between the luxury experiences and the business class tickets and my normal cheap frugal self. So if you do have a budget that you don't like to break, there's 7 countries that may interest you.
That's fantastic. And I noticed that there's 7, and then there's a special mention for one that reportedly has opened today to travel as well, and one of your great favorites. Tell us about your experience in Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is, I would say, and I think I wrote this in the blog. I mentioned this in the blog too. Zimbabwe is top 3, definitely top 5, but probably top 3 countries, top 3, or in the top 3 of my favorite countries in the whole world. Food is phenomenal. Hospitality.
That food, right? Because I think it's generally in Africa, the visitor in many countries needs to make that extra effort, because a lot of the restaurants, like the 4 cheese and the hamburger, if you want local experience, you have to put in some effort.
Yeah, so that actually goes into my second point of what I was just about to say.
Yeah.
The hospitality is second to none, and I think this is what takes it just over the edge for me. Let me tell you about short story about an experience that I had in Zimbabwe. I flew to Zimbabwe, flew into Mutare. Before going to the hotel, I stopped at a local market. Like, let's say I land in Mutare 8:00 in the morning, and going into town, went to a local market, because typically, like, when you arrive at a hotel at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, they're like, oh, you can't check in until 3 o'clock or something like that. So quickly, I'm gonna just run to a market, get the kind of vibe of the city, and then I'll go to the hotel.
Connection issues. We'll have him back in just a moment. The tension builds. More about Zimbabwe. We're waiting with bated breath. It's fascinating. Jamal's been to, I think, around 80 countries, and each person connects with ones that sometimes you can guess. It's big famous countries that tourists of all different stripes fall in love with. I've not previously heard travelers mention Zimbabwe so highly in their top list. So we've got him back. I was just saying as the connection dropped that I don't recall many travelers mentioning Zimbabwe so highly on their list of favorites, and many of us probably haven't dug deep enough that give it the attention it deserves. So tell us more.
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you. Yep. I can hear you. We can't hear you. You can't hear us. What's going on? Last week we had connection issues. This week as well. Bear with us, please. We had a summer of great connections for some reason. Now it's being very stubborn. I am still live. So. Have we got you?
Okay, sorry about that. I'm not sure what went wrong there.
I was just saying we had a summer of great connections, and last week and this week it has just been in the airline parlance, irregular operations. But I was teasing about many of us probably haven't given Zimbabwe the chance to get so high on our favorite list. So continue on about Zimbabwe.
Yeah, so I go to this market, and I essentially just walking through this normal everyday market. I walk up to this table, and this lady, she says, "Oh, what are you looking for?" And we're just making small talk. And she says, "You sound like you're not from here." And I replied, "No, I'm not." And she says, "You're from the United States." And I was like, "Yeah, I am. How did you know that?" And she says, "You sound like Obama." And which is really weird, because like I don't think I have any kind of accent. But she says, "We'll have." Again, making small talk. She says, "Well, have you had any? How long have you been here? And have you had any good Zimbabwean food?" And I was like, "No, I just flew in." I kid you not. This is
Mhm.
at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. She wraps up everything at this market and says, "Come with me. We're gonna go. You're gonna go to my house, and we're gonna have a braai." And in my mind, I'm thinking like I don't know, like my Western mind is
Mhm.
saying, "Wait, I'm not sure what's going on here." Like she's so nice, and I mean, if she tries to rob me, like I think I can take her. But I don't know. Like, I mean, is she taking me to her house to rob me, or like I'm not even
Mhm.
sure how to really adjust to this situation. Long story
Mhm.
short, I actually do go to her house. And a braai is essentially maybe this is the language that I don't necessarily understand, but a braai is essentially like a barbecue. So
Mhm.
I go to her house. We go into her house. I meet her husband, and we sit down and we're talking. Next thing I know, there are people coming through the front door, and I'm the main attraction. Like everyone wants to meet the American. No exaggeration.
Mhm.
Within about a half an hour, there were probably 50 people at this house, and we were having a barbecue. I don't
Mhm.
know where this food came from, but I mean, there was so much food. Everyone was asking me like how I was traveling. They wanted to talk American politics, like everything. It was probably the I don't know, the greatest trip I've ever had, and it all started from me just going to a market,
Mhm.
which was like in my mind is completely crazy that she. I mean, I would suspect she's at the market trying to selling goods to make
Mhm.
money. So she's because she's no longer at the market, she is not making money, therefore not
Mhm.
making. And in fact, she's probably spending money because she's buying food for this bride. But that's the kind of hospitality that just kind of blows my mind. So Zimbabwe, hands down. And I haven't really, I don't really tell in most people about my secrets, like
Mhm.
because I feel like tourists are just gonna go and like spoil my secrets. But I'll give you that one. Zimbabwe, hands down, one of the best places on the face of this planet.
And they are a country in ever worsening economic straits. I followed the news, and it's been a sad story for years, and it seems that it's only gotten worse with the 2020 environment. That I think it's easy for people to think a lot of this is not impacting them necessarily, or but the ramifications in the country that was already on the economic edge and that are serious. So let's share that secret. Let's get the
Yeah,
word out.
yeah,
It's
very
one
much.
that, as I said, too many of us, myself included, are guilty of the Victoria Falls area and not exploring further. And it's been on my list to visit more, and I haven't gotten back when I've had more time. So I need to make that trip myself to repeat and get much deeper to the country. I do remember, I mean, and the resourcefulness, the hospitality, as well as the resourcefulness of countries in shortages, that I had booked this night safari, and then the lights were broken, and so they were driving around. The guide was driving around at like 11 at night, can fix these broken lights that are rigged to this truck. And finally, we pull into some little residential development called Bongo Land, and he found the helicopter repairman for the airport. And the helicopter repairman comes out of bed or whatever at 11 at night, and
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
and the wires, just like in the movies, the wires together sparking and getting the light, and then we're back
yeah.
out.
Yeah, so I shared the 7 countries, but I mean I could probably talk about a million different countries. I've been quite a few places. When before I cut out, I heard you say something about the 80 countries, and I think that's only when I stopped counting because
Mm,
as I told you previously, I had this plan that I would never revisit a country that I
mhm,
had, but then I met my wife and she hadn't been to a lot of countries. So we started over.
mm,
And then that's kind of when I stopped counting. And that was a decade ago. That's
Oh,
too deep.
really? Oh, okay, yeah, I'm far behind then. And I'm curious, which one's on the repeat visit? I mean, it's such a different experience from visiting solo to returning with family and seeing it through their eyes as well as yours. Which repeat ones that have really been the most rewarding?
I think all of them, to be honest.
Mm,
It's a similar to what you just said. It's
mm,
a different experience when
mhm,
going traveling solo. You are on your own timeline and you're doing things that are important to you.
mhm,
When you're with a significant other, like traveling with my wife, and I have a 2-year-old daughter, things slow down.
mhm,
And what I would do normally as a solo traveler is very different than what I'm doing as a family man. And you can't possibly move at the same speed with a 2-year-old.
mhm.
So even just the
How much
repeats.
stuff do you need to actually travel the 2-year-old? Because I see some families, usually American, that I mean they seem to have a U-Haul with them on the plane just to fit the mega stroller, and then other families they seem to get by with very little. What's actually the amount of stuff you need to carry?
I think it's a trial and error type thing. um, I wrote. I haven't really covered a lot of family travel on the blog,
Hmm.
and it was supposed to be a lot more travel in 2020, but
Hmm.
coronavirus kind of changed my plans. But in 2000, last year, 2019, I documented and wrote about our family trip to Hawaii.
Mm.
And this was when my daughter was maybe just north of 1 year old.
Mm.
And this was her first long trip. We had kind of
Hmm.
introduced her to the Atlanta to Detroit, Atlanta to Cleveland, like little short trips.
Hmm.
But this was the first long haul. We're going to Hawaii trip, and
Mm.
it's fascinating because as new parents, you don't know how much how many things you need to take.
Mm.
And a 1-year-old can go through 3 or 4 outfits in a matter of a day, easy. Even with diapers, I mean, you can go through 10 diapers in a day. And so I had it's kind of funny because I think I posted to Instagram a picture where we're going to Hawaii for a week, and I had a roller bag and a book bag. That's a carry-on bag and a book bag. That's all I had for a whole week.
Mm.
Whereas my 1-year-old daughter, who cannot even walk, has a checked bag. I may have in fact had 2 checked bags just because of the stroller, the diapers, the 4 outfits a day, the sunscreens, the hats. I mean, just you name it. The binkies, just in case we've lost the binky. Yeah, it was challenging, but we learned a lot on that trip.
So let's figure that in the next year or two, you guys are back on the road, 2 years old. How you're a systematic planner? How are you thinking about when to visit where and how you want her to have travel experiences growing up?
um, Actually, that's probably another subject that we're kind of exploring right now because things have dramatically changed.
Hmm.
I'm a I'm primarily a points and miles guy now,
Hmm.
and uh, prior to turning 2 years old, she qualified as a lap infant.
Mm.
So 99% of flights are completely free. She turned 2 in May 2020, so kind of in the middle of this pandemic. And so the challenge now is I'm paying for. Well, actually, I've had to figure out which airlines are better for us to fly because some airlines are like you pay a fraction of the miles for
Hmm.
a 2-year-old. They may have their own seat or whatever, but you pay a fraction of the miles. And some airlines are, I don't know, they're terms and conditions say you have to pay 10% of the adult ticket in cash.
Mm.
Yeah, so
And this is full fare, right? This is like
yes,
not the cheapest ticket.
exactly. So so yeah, we're exploring different options now. Like sometimes we started down a path with a certain airline only to find out that it was going to cost 10% of an adult ticket and 10% of an adult business class ticket. It's a little over the budget. So
Mm.
we've had to change airlines or change the way we do things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think we're in the middle of that. It was determining what's the best route for best and perhaps hopefully cheapest route for a family to travel.
I'm guessing this is not every March for 10 years you're going to be going to Disney World. So what are some of the the ideas you have, the experiences you really want her to have?
I'm actually planning. I'm planning trips as I'm planning trips that I would normally plan for myself. Like just because she's 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, doesn't mean that we're not going to Zimbabwe. That
Mm.
we're going to Egypt. It's going to be a learning experience, but I'm interested in learning, and I want her to have those experiences that I didn't have when I was growing up. So yeah, we'll see. But everything on the every country is on the list right now.
Mm. Fantastic.
I'm driven if I'm not redeeming points, I'm actually driven by the cost of trips. So if something comes up, if I don't know, somewhere in the United States to Egypt is on sale, we're going to Egypt.
Mm.
So we'll see.
How to get a child interested in aviation? You proudly identify as what we call an aviation geek.
Very much so. Very much so.
So how to teach a child, how to get a child in aviation? I'm wondering, just come naturally, or you're going to be at the roads outside airports watching takeoffs together?
I'm glad you say that because because that's that's exactly what we do. Yeah, I have introduced her. One of her first words was airplane. So a lot of times, when I don't know, let's say I pull up my blog on the computer, she'll often look at my picture, and there's a strand of pictures across the top of my like a border on top of my blog. She'll say, "Daddy, airplane." Or if I scroll down, like the profile picture for some of these blogs will be planes, and she'll say airplane. Or anytime we're walking down the street and a plane is crossing, or she hears an airplane, "Daddy, airplane." So, hey, that's how
within
it
a year,
works.
you're going to be saying, no, it's a A330 with winglets, please.
Right. No,
Wait, the Av Geeks will probably correct me. I don't even know. I get so mixed up about them. I don't know if there's A330s with winglets.
It's okay. I think you fall into the 99% of people who cannot identify planes. And it's actually funny because I actually strive to be less of an aviation geek because like I see things, I can see a plane from a mile away and literally gauge and know what kind of plane it is just by the kind of features it has. Like if it has 4 engines, I mean that limits it pretty much like 2 or 3 planes. Like, so I already know what it is, and based on the color, like that's Emirates or that's Lufthansa. Actually, that's the new paint job right there.
Oh wow! I mean, I can manage with Spirit. It's this giant banana flying.
Yeah, I'm very much an aviation geek, and I think now, even on the blog, it's starting to I'm starting to go a little bit deeper into the different products that different planes offer, and writing quite a few reviews about the business class cabins on different airlines, and like, oh man, that's my heart right there. I get excited about just I love the destination, and as weird as this sounds, like even more excited about the plane that I'm flying on, the type of plane that I'm flying on, the airline, and I don't know what the service is going to be like, or whether it's the Thompson Aero Vantage seat, business
Mhm.
class seat. Yeah, so yeah, I get excited.
And that's something I think I've become aware of, and more casual travelers may not be, is this incredible amount of variation within one airline that
Yeah,
if you look at a site like Seat Guru, you start to see all these different airline, different planes and configurations. It'll say version 1, version 2, the Delta 757. I don't know, what is it, 6 or 8 or how many, and they're very different, and the seats can be quite different, and somebody redeeming points or your cash for say a premium cabin seat or even an exit row. Your exit row might have a lot of leg room, or there might be a wall 2 inches away from
right,
your
right,
knees.
right, very much so. And it's gotten to the point now where, like, airlines are allowed to do equipment swaps, but I study routes and airplanes and try to limit the chances that they're going to have an equipment swap. But
Hmm.
yeah, I'm looking for the 787 -9 Dreamliners. I'm looking for the 787 or 787-9s. I'm looking for the 350-1000s, the 350-900s. I'm looking for the 380s, the A380s, and all those products are different depending on the airline. Etihad is different from Emirates. Emirates is different from Qatar Airways. Delta doesn't even have A380s. So yeah, I live in this.
Yeah. What are some of if you're the travel as an aviation geek, are there destinations around the world, airports, runways, museums that are on the aviation geeks world map of travel must sees?
Uh, I think it kind of depends on. I think it kind of depends on your what's kind of pleasing to you, because we have, I think, in the miles and points circle there
Hmm.
are the, I guess, the aspirational bucket list. These are the top 10 business class seats.
Hmm.
If you want to fly on Emirates, or you want to fly on ANA, Qatar Q Suites, like there are airlines like that. So I get that, and I understand that these may be the aspirational products, but I've enjoyed some products that aren't on people's list.
Hmm.
I've even enjoyed, actually, here's a perfect example. I haven't I haven't really heard too many people speak about this, but I went to the recently. I went to, well, not recently, last year. I went to Fiji,
Hmm.
and I wanted to review Fiji Airways from LAX to Fiji, and I flew economy. So this was not, I redeemed points, but flew economy, documented my whole experience.
Hmm.
Um, there is a lounge at the Fiji airport that was, it's bucket list material. Like, you have to experience this lounge. It was a priority pass lounge. So priority pass pretty much comes with every credit card. It was a phenomenal lounge.
And
Um,
the new terminal and the new lounge, as I understand.
yeah,
I've,
yes,
I've spent many nights waiting for flights in the old lounge, and it's not bucket
yeah,
list. It was not bucket list. Very friendly staff, is what you can say.
yeah. We should definitely clarify that. There is, uh again, I know a lot of, I guess, mainstream bloggers will cover the Emirates and the Etihads and the ANAs of the world, but
Hmm.
even something as simple as, I was in, I was in I don't think it was Geneva. It must have been Zurich. I think it was Zurich. Zurich, the Swiss business class lounge.
Hmm.
phenomenal lounge, and
Hmm.
they have a uh, like I guess like an observation deck, so you can go outside and literally watch all these planes, these international carriers, the A380s, the 787s. You can watch them leave, and it's a phenomenal lounge. And personally, I hadn't read about this lounge, and I just happened to I was transiting through, flying, going to review Swiss Airlines, and I went into the lounge, and I was like, why haven't I read about this? It was it's probably one of my favorite lounges in the whole world.
Wow.
So I think it kind of depends on what you like, but I personally love lounges. I love airports altogether, but I love lounges. And again, this is kind of a weird aviation thing,
Hmm.
but I love taking showers at airports, and so I I judge a lot of airports by the showers that they have available at the airport. And Swiss, it's a phenomenal shower. So
Because most of these, I mean, it seems great, except there's no ventilation, and it's incredibly hot in there. And you come out, you've taken a shower, but you're so hot and sweaty, it's like, oh, I need to go back for another shower.
which brings me to another lounge. I recently I flew Turkish. Recently, I was coming back from Oman on a trip from Oman, and I was flying Turkish. So I flew
Hmm.
from Muscat, Oman to Istanbul, Istanbul to Atlanta, all on Turkish. And I had a very long
Hmm.
layover in Istanbul in the new airport.
Mm.
Phenomenal.
Oh,
If
wow.
Yeah, if you're not aware of Turkish and their lounges, they're pretty phenomenal. So this is my first time experiencing their new airport and their new lounge, and they have, I guess you would call them like sleeper rooms or like small apartments. Um, yeah, small apartments with a bed, a TV, everything.
Oh.
So I took a shower, and then I came back into my sleeper room. I mean, which is it's a an adequate apartment. And I
Hmm.
wrote a review, so you can read it on there. But there was no ventilation, and I was literally sitting in this small apartment thinking, this layover is 8 hours. Do I go and sit in the lounge for 8 hours, or do I just sit in this bed and just sweat half to death? uh, yeah, it was a interesting experience, but an okay lounge.
There's some airport. Most of the airports in Spain seem to. It doesn't matter what season of the year, seem to be about 95 degrees
Yeah,
Fahrenheit,
yeah,
and
very
they're
much.
all still wearing jackets.
Yes, very much so. And I've transited through Spain probably 10 times in the last year. That's very much a fact. It's very hot.
Well, you mentioned earlier that you're not seeing a lot of people that look like you in this area. I mean, going to every country in the world, the points hobby, very white privileged in many cases. Talk about what that is, and the you're setting a tremendous example for people of all kinds to see that you don't have to be one way to take this on, to build up your credit, to financial savvy, earning points, aviation, all of this stuff. You're a tremendous example.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's kind of what set my blog kind of in motion. Um, I had, again, being an aviation geek,
Hmm.
wanting to travel and actually traveling a lot. Um, I had gone to different travel conferences
Hmm.
and become kind of frustrated with the equation of, I walk into a room and there is, I mean, like almost as you said, very white, very privileged, talking about miles and points, and I'm the only black person, male or female, in the whole room. And and there there's a, I guess, a safety and a sense of self that you have when someone looks like you, and you can kind of discuss like where you want to go, and
Hmm.
you have those things in common. And I found myself kind of in this gray zone. Like I'm not necessarily a part of the, like my example is I went to like Frequent Traveler University,
Mm-hmm.
and a great conference, but I do not look like anyone in this room. And the destination, even the destinations that they're talking about, I'm not necessarily interested in. And then I found myself also like on social media in these Black travel groups. There's kind of this, I guess, this movement, especially
Mm-hmm.
among the X generation, this new generation that are of Black travelers who are just traveling around the world. And
Mm-hmm.
so I found myself in these two different groups where if I'm in the Black group, no one's really talking about points. They're buying
Mm-hmm.
tickets. And then this white group here is they're talking about miles and points and not spending any or not a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in neither group. And so since I saw that as an opportunity to help people and kind of explain what I was doing, that's kind of where my blog evolved from. I was like, I wanted to show you that I'm getting this credit card, or even before that, showing the foundational steps of
Mm-hmm.
I started with when I wanted to get a credit card, I had a 500 credit score. I thought it was fine. I wasn't really attuned to what credit scores meant, but I had a 500 credit score. And when I went to apply for a credit card, Chase was like, no, 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 no.
I mean,
I
it's got to
don't
be like 700 is the entry point, right? To get
exactly,
the card.
exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I applied for this credit card, and basically they're like, yeah, no. So I had to figure out how to increase my credit score,
Uh-huh.
but even that was, and I document this on my blog.
Uh-huh.
I had to figure out how to increase my credit score. And when I'm just doing simple Google searches, they're saying like, well, you need to essentially have credit extended to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, how can I get credit extended to me if I apply for a credit card and then they won't give it to me? Like, I don't really understand how this equation works. And so yeah, I talk about that on the blog. Literally, hopefully your credit score, if anyone is watching this, your credit score is not below the 500 that I had. But I can tell you, in a matter of probably a year, I went from 500 to 600, 600, 700, 700 to it's upwards or just north of 800 now. And I can pretty much get any credit card that I want, I think. Yeah, but it's been a transition, and this is what I'm covering in my blog. Like you can literally, I have a user guide that will literally walk you through how I started, how to increase your credit scores with like my personal path was getting a secure card. And I talk about different secure cards
Mm-hmm.
and the pros and cons of getting those secure cards, um, which will literally walk you into the blogs that I'm writing today.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So I have a beginner's guide that literally walk you from step one to I think step I think there's 10 steps maybe to get you kind of where I am. And if your credit score is great and you can get a credit card, hey, that's even better because you can apply for the Chase Sapphire Reserves and the Chase Sapphire Preferreds. And I think I blogged about the IHG card today. There are lots of points out there, and your travel experiences and your travel expenses can decrease significantly with just a credit card or two. And that's kind of where I'm at now.
That's great, I think, and it's so much of the financial literacy sources and coverage out there is about getting out of situations where you'd fall into credit card debt and that, which can be incredibly punitive. But then there's for people that have reached the point where they're able to have their finances under control, they could take on a credit card without falling into debt on it with being able to make their payments every month. There's very little to say, okay, you mastered this level.
Right.
Now you can take on some of this in a responsible way and reap some tremendous rewards if done right.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I haven't. That's kind of what I try to focus on is the simple steps that you can do to achieve like great financial stability. Like you don't. A credit card is great until you're in trouble. And I think one rule that I have for myself specifically is if I would not swipe my debit card, I don't swipe my credit card. If this money is not in, and I understand that people get in situations where you have to swipe the credit card, but in general, that's the rule I live by. If I would not swipe my debit card for this, I'm swiping my credit card. And that's helped me stay on the straight path so far. So, but yeah, once you kind of dive into the points and miles world, it can be addicting because you get to experience these aspirational products, and yeah, now you have to get another credit card.
And I like that you don't call it a game. I think a lot of people call it a game, and the thing is that starts to make people think there aren't real consequences. And
there are very real consequences. 22% interest on a late fee is not a game.
Very well said. Yes, and I'm glad to hear that message. The blog Frugal Travel Guy that got me into the hobby was your credit is your most important asset, and that former bank loan officer created that, Rick Ingersoll, and it's an important lesson that I've internalized and gets overlooked and forgotten.
Well, I think it goes beyond even credit cards. Like I didn't really understand. I started with financial literacy more so for the credit cards, but then I started to see the advantage of my credit score increasing. All of a sudden, I don't know, when I went to go buy a house, the terms were a lot different. When I go buy a car, the terms were a lot different. All because I had taken the time to work on my credit score. I had gotten the secure card, and I mean, this didn't, everything that you're seeing on the blog didn't happen overnight. This is many years down the line, and now I'm trying to convey exactly what happened over these 2 years. And so, yeah, it's a path, and it's a marathon, not a sprint. Like I very much, I'm grateful for everything that did happen when it came to my credit score. Like, I did not understand credit. I did not understand credit scores, and no one ever taught me about credit scores. No one taught me said anything or had a discussion with me about how to increase it, things that would jeopardize your credit score. So, yeah, this is many years in the making.
Yeah, my wife, who went to business school, I mean, she mentioned, and she's not from the United States originally, so business school's introduction, and she said, how come they taught me so much at business school except how to do anything with money?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Well, 2020 is absolutely a marathon, and taking the long view, and looking forward for more tremendous blogging and travels from you. Thank you for joining us tonight, Jamal.
Thank you so much.